So if I pull down this area here, you can see my normal lines, right? I have my normal lines there, which are there, and I'm fine with that, right? But there's no product buildup in the middle of it, right? So we're going to let go of that side. Now, if I go to this side, you should be able to see product buildup there. So in my lines there, you can already see the concealer kind of setting in those lines. Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome or welcome back to my YouTube channel, which is all about educational beauty. Today's video is an updated video. So it's all about how to avoid that under eye creasing, and I have listened to your comments. You guys have been saying to me that you want close-ups, so here we go. This is how you can avoid under eye creasing, but it's close up so you guys can really see exactly what you need to do. I learned from my previous video, even though it did go viral, it's crazy. So let's hope this one does too. So anyway, before we head into the video, if you do like this video, please do give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell button so that you never miss any of my future videos. And don't forget, catch me over on Instagram where we can say hi to one another. You can watch my stories for some daily beauty news and PR unboxing. So let's jump straight into the video. So let's get started. I have a little bit of concealer on my eyelids here, and I've just feathered in my brows just a little bit, and a tiny bit of concealer just on like the jawline area and on my nose. I've left my under eye area completely because I really wanted to kind of like show you, as I've mentioned, a much closer kind of look at how to avoid that under eye creasing. So we're going to start with my concealer. I'm going to use my Tarte Shape Tape concealer because that's my general day-to-day concealer. My shade is 35N medium. Now I'm going to be doing one side of my face with basically the usual kind of setting that a lot of people tend to do, and this is based on the number of people who have commented on my viral video of how to avoid under eye creasing, and just generally speaking to clients and everything about how they set the under eye and they still get creasing. So I'm going to set it in that way so that you guys can actually see what the difference is between the technique that I use and then the technique which I believe, kind of think, is kind of more widely used. So let's see what the difference is. I'm going to start off with applying my concealer on my under eyes on both eyes. So I'm going to start here and I'm just going to apply it as I normally do. And by the way, guys, I've had a lot of you comment saying, you know, what if we don't apply that much concealer? At the end of the day, I'm going to show you the amount of concealer that I would use. It doesn't mean you have to use that amount. You use whatever you feel works for you. This is just to show you the technique, and it doesn't mean you have to use the same amount of product as I'm using. So we're going to go over to the other eye as well. Now, usually what I do is I let that concealer kind of like sit for a little while, because if you let it sit that just a little bit extra, it kind of gives you the most amazing coverage. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of buff this one in, because this is the side where I am basically going to be showing you how you guys probably do set your under eye, and so you can compare. Okay, so we've got a concealer on there. Now I'm going to go in on the other side because I feel like I've left that long enough. And I'm just going to buff this in the same way. Okay, so we have got the concealer on both sides of my under eyes. It's nicely buffed in, nice and flawless. But ultimately, let's get to the point, how to avoid under eye creasing. Just want to quickly mention that it is normal to have under eye creasing. You know, we all have creases somewhere on our face, a lot of places, not a lot of places, you know. It's kind of normal, and that's what happens. This isn't to eradicate that creasing at all. This is to avoid the creasing that happens when you have makeup kind of sitting in those creases, which then makes that crease kind of look even more obvious. So that's what I'm going to show you how to avoid. As mentioned before, this side is going to be the technique that I feel a lot of people use, and I'm going to be using that technique. And this side is going to be my technique. This, honestly, I would say is life-changing when it comes to your makeup. Honestly, you won't have to worry about under eye creasing. I've seen a lot of videos out there using different types of product to help kind of eliminate that under eye creasing. Personally, I don't think you need that. I think if you can just master every step of this technique, you're going to get it perfect, and you're going to avoid that under eye creasing without having to use, you know, random products on the under eye area. Also, just a quick note, I did have eye cream on, so I didn't want to go through all the skincare side of it, because honestly, everyone uses their own different type of thing, and some people don't use eye cream. I would always recommend to use eye cream, but I don't think it's a massive part of the technique that I'm going to be showing you, so I'm just showing you the makeup side. So you can apply your concealer however you want on the under eye area. You may apply it in the same way that I apply it, which is what I've shown you, or you may apply it in a different way. It's completely fine. What I would recommend is you take that concealer onto the area that you need it. And if you're like me and you take it a little bit further up into the lower lash line, then this is going to work perfect for you. This is also going to work great for like smile lines and things like that. So you can use this technique on anywhere that you feel creases up. So the under eye area, we've applied the concealer. Now we're going to move on to the next step, which is actually such an important part of this routine, and it is to make sure that we get rid of those creases before we actually set the makeup. If you do not get rid of these creases, basically what you're doing is you're setting the creases with your powder. So honestly, it's just about getting rid of that excess product that is built up in those lines, because obviously that's where the creasing starts. Because what happens is we start smiling and things like that, and then what happens is the product kind of like builds up in each of those fine lines, which is normal to have. And then when you kind of like straighten your face and you've got like, you know, no expression, that's when your creases kind of relax, right? Because when you're smiling, you're kind of moving around and all the product starts to move around. When it sits there, what happens is it sits there and then it collects there, and you can see all that kind of concealer or foundation in those creases, because when you've relaxed and your creases are kind of back to their normal state, that's where you can see that product build up there. Ideally, what I would recommend is you apply your concealer, your foundation, however you apply it, and you very quickly get rid of those creases, and then you move on to the setting. Now, we've been talking a little bit, so we have kind of had that little bit of a gap, but it shouldn't make a difference because we're still going to get rid of those creases. Ultimately, what I want to do now is get rid of the creases within those lines that I can see. Like, I can already see that it is built up, so I can see that the lines are kind of like accentuated a little bit more. I can see that the product is sitting in those lines, and my lines just look a bit more obvious, which is not great, and we're really not going for that kind of look. What we want to do is we want to get rid of those lines. I'm not going to be getting rid of those lines on this side because I'm going to be setting the under eye there the same way that I feel like a lot of people do set it, or from what I've heard from comments and everything on my previous video. I'm just going to be taking out the product from the lines on this side, and this is the side where I'm going to be setting it in my technique. Now, what I want to be doing is kind of like lifting the product out. So I'm using my beauty blender, and all I'm doing is kind of like going into that line and then just kind of flicking up. And what that's doing is grabbing hold of the product and taking it out of the line, you know, so that excess product is now gone. So I can see, maybe you do have to like kind of make that face, it's fine, go with it. I'm just going to stretch like that and get rid of the lines. I've got rid of all that product buildup. There you go. Now all I can see is my normal lines that are there, which is fine, you know. So what I want to do now is want to go straight into my powder. I'm going to be using my Ben Nye Banana powder, and I'm going to set this side the way that I do usually, and I'm just going to press. So I'm going to press the powder right on top of that under eye area there. Now, I'm not going to let that sit there, but I am going to dust it off straight away because I don't personally like baking that much. I like just pressing it in and taking it off straight away. So what I'm going to do is just very lightly get rid of this powder. There, I very lightly dusted it off. By the way, I don't have like foundation on anywhere else because I really just wanted to focus on kind of like the concealer, the application. So I'm just doing this under eye area for you guys. Now I've kind of set that area and I'm happy with that. So now I'm going to leave that. Now I'm going to go over to this side. I'm going to set this in the way that I know a lot of people do. Some people use the Laura Mercier translucent powder, which is fine. You can use whatever powder that you feel like using or whatever your usual powder is. Although I've had a few questions about does pressed powder work? Pressed powder isn't as effective at setting your makeup. Loose powder is much more effective at that. So I would personally recommend using a loose powder, something like either Laura Mercier translucent powder if you are a lighter skin tone than me, or, you know, get the powder which you feel suits your skin tone. I use banana powder because it's perfect for my skin tone. I'm a bit warmer, so it just fits in perfectly with my skin tone. Some people use a slightly darker shade to work on darker skin tone, so it is completely up to you what powder you use, but I would recommend using a loose setting powder. The sponge that I used was my Laura Mercier powder puff. So all I do is I kind of squeeze it together like this, put the powder on, like kind of pat the the puff into the powder and then take the excess off of my hand, and then I go in and then I straight away dust it off. Now I'm going to use the same powder because ultimately you use whatever powder you're going to be using. And now this is where I'm getting my Real Techniques setting brush. I'm kind of like putting the brush into the powder, which is in the palm of my hand, and then I'm just going to kind of like gonna set this in this way here. Now, realistically, it takes time for the product to build up. So I'm showing you right now, and usually it would take maybe a few hours for you to start seeing that creasing. And that's where your problem is, because that's where a lot of you tend to message me saying, you know what, I set it in my normal way and it's fine for the first couple of hours. And then later on in the day, the creases just come through and it's just looking awful. Obviously, I'm not waiting a couple of hours, but it has kind of like, I can already see the difference. And that's what I really wanted to show you kind of close up. The way I'm going to show you is just give you a really close up look basically. So what I want to do is I want to pull down the skin a little bit on either side so that you can see where that product buildup is. So if I pull down this area here, you can see my normal lines, right? I have my normal lines there, which are there, and I'm fine with that, right? But there's no product buildup in the middle of it, right? So we're going to let go of that side. Now, if I go to this side, you should be able to see product buildup there. So in my lines there, you can already see the concealer kind of setting in those lines. You can already see how it's just settling in and it's starting to build up. And later on in a few hours, you'll notice that becomes worse and worse basically. So that's where people have that frustration, because they can see the lines kind of like building up and it's like, oh my God, like why it just looks even worse than before. So I do totally understand the frustration, and that's why I really wanted to kind of like really simplify this for you, and most importantly show you a really close up look at how you can avoid that under eye creasing. So hopefully this has kind of explained it all for you, and I really do hope that it kind of gives you a better look at the under eye area, because it's a lot closer. And I had so many of you kind of messaging saying that, look, we really just want a close-up version of it so you guys can see exactly how I do set that under eye and how you can see the difference. And I have seen, like I mentioned earlier, I've seen some videos where, you know, you're using different products to try and avoid that under eye creasing. It's great, it probably works. I'm not definitely, you know, go out and try that as well, like whatever other kind of videos you come across which show you different versions of trying to avoid the under eye like creasing. But I just feel that it's very simple, and if you do each step thoroughly and you get it right, then you're not really going to have to use different random products on the under eye area. So I feel like it's quite time consuming, and I just feel like if you want to set your under eye area and you want to avoid the creasing, you don't want anything which is time consuming, and you definitely don't want to be using anything which is a bit kind of like fussy. You just want to use the products that you would usually use, but it's the technique. So that's what I'm trying to explain to you, is that this is all about the technique. Now, I'm not saying that the products don't matter, because they do matter, because if you were to do that with a pressed powder, you definitely wouldn't get the same kind of result. And trust me, I've tried it. So I try all these things beforehand so that I can show you guys the best techniques, the techniques that actually work. And I've been doing this for so long, like as a makeup artist, I've been working for years and years and years. I've worked on so many different bases that along the way, especially at the beginning, you make mistakes. And sometimes you, especially being self-taught, you make mistakes and you learn from it. And at the beginning, you know, that was the case for me. With most makeup artists, it would be. You know, they'd be lying if they said that they don't make those mistakes and you don't forget the odd thing in your kit. The whole point is for me to kind of share my expertise with you and share the techniques that actually work, because they're tried and tested, and personally I feel that it's going to completely change your makeup life. So I really hope that you've enjoyed this, and I hope that this has kind of like answered any questions that you have about your under eye area, and most importantly given you a close-up look at it. I hope you've enjoyed this video and you've learned so much from it. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments box below. As always, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, hit the little bell button so that you never miss any of my future videos. Until the next video, take care and I'll see you soon.